Regina, it's just a conversation I like to have with my neighbors, and I just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in Sacramento, California on January 3rd, 1974.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And tell me, was mom and dad around?
Yeah, mom was around. I was raised by a single mother. Yeah, when I had three older siblings. I was the baby of 4 kids. And by the time I was born, my mom didn't want kids anymore, so I was pawned off on my sister, who's 11 and a half years older than me. So I got to spend a lot of time with my 16-year-old sister when I was 5, and she wasn't allowed to leave the house without me, so I was basically her ball and chain. But my mom worked and went to school, and my grandma and my mom had their own business when I was growing up, so that was kind of cool, to see my mom and my grandma be empowered by that, But when I was 7, my stepdad and my mom got divorced, and I thought it was my fault, so that was kind of hard. But I had my first beer when I was 8, and my first hit of a joint when I was 10, and my first lick of meth when I was 13. And
well, tell me about that progression. How did you get a hold of beer at 8? What was that story?
Just being at my grandma's house, my grandma would have beers all the time, and here, give me another beer, and throw this one away, and okay. Took the beer, and I'm like, there's still beer in here.
Curiosity.
I'll drink this.
Curious.
So. But because I had heard my grandma tell my mom, I need a couple of beers at night so I can sleep. So I was like, sleep? I like sleep, because after the divorce, it was really, like I said, it was hard on me. So I had a lot of nightmares and a lot of hard time sleeping. So I was like, sleep? I like sleep. I'll drink this beer like grandma, And so I wasn't really a drunk, I do know kids that drank a lot at that age. But I grew up in the 70s, early 80s, so kids were kids then,
Right,
we played outside, we skinned our knees. Yeah, exactly. We rode in the back of trucks and drank out of hoses,
Yeah.
Things that kids don't know nothing about these days, And got my first car when I was 17, and I started driving around, and I hardly ever went home. I hated being at home. My mom was a narcissist. She was kind of rough on me, like I said, because she didn't want kids by the time I was born.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Everything was my fault. I always made her look bad, my behavior. Your behavior makes me look bad. Your behavior makes me look like a bad parent. I don't understand how. It's my behavior. How does that make you look bad if I'm screwing up? You know what I mean? And so, and then my brother Ronnie, who's just 4 years older than me, he's my next sibling. He was born broken. He had bad allergies, bad asthma. When he was 14, he fell off a baseball backstop and got a blood clot in the back of his neck that caused him to have epilepsy for the rest of his life. And so my mom babied him, and I always wondered what he had because he had my mom's attention, and I could never get that. So I hated him for that. My mom died 10 years ago. I still miss her. But my family didn't tell me she was dead for 4 months. I had to find out by my son going to see her, and they told my son that she didn't live there anymore. So that was kind of screwed up, but that's my family for you. My brother Chet lives in North Dakota. He got out when he could. He got thrown out when he was 15 by my mom's next husband, my second stepfather.
And this is all in Sacramento?
Yeah, this is all in Sacramento, yeah. I lived in Sacramento until I was 39. And then, until I was 33, and then I went to prison in Reno, Nevada. And then when I got out of prison, I stayed in Reno. And then I met my husband that I'm married to now. And in 2016, we hopped on a freight train out of Sparks, Nevada, and never looked. We've been here for 3.5 years. 4.5 years. But yeah, we came to Seattle, and we're both recovering heroin addicts. And we came to Seattle, and it was a bad idea. I've been strung out ever since. So it's hard to eat off of. I usually work a job. I worked at 7-Eleven, I've worked at McDonald's, I worked at Taco Bell. I prefer to have a job, even though I live outside, just because it's easier to maintain my habit. And, I don't pay rent or anything, so I always have money, So this is as long as I've been without a job, since November. But,
So when you got from Nevada to Seattle, what was the idea? What was the dream?
Well, when we left Nevada, we hopped on a freight train, like I said, and we ended up in Ogden, Utah. We traveled all the way to Texas and back. I hadn't seen my brother Chet in North Dakota. I hadn't seen him in almost 25 years. So we made it a point to get to North Dakota eventually. It took us about 3 years to get there. We did 15 states in 2.5 years.
But so the idea was just to travel.
Just to travel, yeah.
Gotcha.
And when we got to North Dakota, we ended up there for a little while, and it started to get cold. And in North Dakota, when it gets cold, it gets cold. So my husband got a job at a hotel there, and it came with cheap rent, like $320 a month. So we were paying that. We stayed there for a year, and then we were like, okay, so this worked out a little bit. I got a job at McDonald's. He worked at the hotel. We had money coming in, and but we were paying a lot of money for pot. Pot was ridiculous, man. We were paying $230, $250 a half ounce pot. I was like, we need to go back to the West Coast. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, they have legal weed there. So that's what we did. We came back out here. Well, we were in La Grande, Oregon, and his father moved out there with us. And his father was an alcoholic. And one night we were sleeping out because we slept out by the river. Because in Oregon you can camp by the river, and they don't fault you for that. They don't ticket you or tell you to move like they do here. And his dad was drinking a beer, and his dad's dad died from dementia. He had real bad dementia, and we could see it coming in his father. The more he drank, the more his mind would go. And so one night he was talking to me, and he just started talking crazy to me. And my husband got up and smacked the beer out of his hand, and he was like, "That's enough of that shit." So then his dad went to the shelter and told them, "Well, I'm not safe where I live." And so my husband was scared to death he was going to get in trouble for that. So we saw this big purple bus at the Walmart. So we walked over to talk to the kids that were on it, and they were like, "Well, we're going to Seattle. They're $16 an hour minimum wage," and we're making $10.25 an hour at the Taco Bell up there. And we was like, $16 an hour? Fuck this job! So we hopped on the bus and been in Seattle ever since.
What year was that?
That was the day after our 6-year wedding anniversary. So 4 years ago.
Okay, so 4 years ago, so you've been married 10 years?
Yeah, we've been married 10 years.
And you said that you have some kids?
Yeah, I have children. All my children are grown. I've got my daughter Candace, she's over at Sierra's right now. My son Sean, he's around somewhere. And then I have 2 kids that I had when I was the first one I had in prison, the second one I had in county jail. But they're both adopted out. My youngest son will be 18 in July, and my youngest daughter will be 15 in July, or 15 in July. And yeah, so my son, my daughter, my sister picked up from the hospital in Las Vegas where I was in prison, and she brought him home and kept him for 7 weeks, and then wrote me a letter that said that I'm newly divorced and learning to eat my dessert first, and I don't know what you want me to do with this baby. And I was like, well, why did you pick him up then? Like, if you weren't going to keep him, why did you pick him up? You know what I mean? So she went to an adoption attorney and found some families that were looking for a baby, and so this family that adopted him lived in Ohio. They moved to Ohio now, but.
And that was your child?
That was my son, yeah, my youngest son.
Gotcha.
His name's Jacob, and they lived in Sacramento. They used to live in Rockland, California, which is right outside of Sacramento, and they were like the dream family, if you were in heaven getting ready to be born, and they're like, here's a catalog of parents, pick your parents, these are the parents, you'd be like, I want those ones, you know what I mean? They had huge Christmases, huge family get-togethers, things like that. And then his mom's had some issues, but he's gonna be 18, and he's already asking about me, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna want to meet me, so I'm kind of scared of that. My daughter Jasmine, my sister stole her. Her dad was fighting for her through the court system, put himself in family drug court, getting off drugs. He was doing the best he could. But in Nevada, if you have a child out of your care and custody for 21 of 24 consecutive months, they can take your children. And they took the child. And they gave her to my sister. I haven't seen her since she was 3.
Wow.
She didn't know that she wasn't of that family.
Right.
She thought that was her real mom and dad,
right,
until she saw a picture of me pregnant.
And
she said, that's my mom.
Right. Because you look just like her.
Yeah, not just because I look like her,
looks
but
just like you.
There's no pictures of her mom pregnant.
Gotcha.
There's no pictures of her mom pregnant. She said, there's no pictures of my mom pregnant. There's no newborn pictures of me. There's, what I'm saying? Like, I know I came from somewhere else. I had to have. There's no way that this is the family I was given.
So are you in touch with that daughter?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. I can't wait, though, because I know she's going to have some things to say to me,
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's not going to be all good, but she's going to have to understand that it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
Her dad was doing the best he could for her. And my sister stole her, literally stole her literally showed up in court on our court date and was like, I'm taking the baby, I'd like to take the baby home, Your Honor. And the judge was like, and what makes you qualified? She said, I've done all my foster classes and blah, blah, blah. And so she took her right out of CPS custody that same day, drove back to Oregon with her in the car.
That's brutal. I got 2 daughters. I could not even
yeah, it was, I mean, yeah, it was hard. I mean, I'd never met her, physically met her, you know.
Oh, you hadn't even met her.
No.
So when you had, this is the daughter you had in prison.
This is the daughter I had in county jail.
So
I spent 3 days with her
Okay.
in the hospital, and
Gotcha.
and they let her dad come up and sign the birth certificate at the hospital, which they weren't supposed to let him up there while I was there, but and she ended up staying. She was staying in the hospital for 7 days, and he could go see her, and then he became friends with the foster family that had fostered her, and he would come and pick her up every day. He would babysit while they were at work. You know, he would, you know, so he was very much a part of her life, very, very much a part of her life for the first 2 years, and then my sister literally stole her from him, and he was so devastated by that. You know,
And this was the father,
This
but
is the father, yeah.
he couldn't fight.
yeah,
either.
he couldn't fight it. I mean, because it took him too long to get himself together. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
and
see,
the
I
you know,
see.
so like I said, 21
Yeah.
or 24 consecutive months
Yeah,
they could
I
take their
see.
children, and she was 23 months old. So
Regina, that's incredibly tough.
yeah, it was really hard. Yeah,
How do you cope with all
drugs,
that?
lots of drugs and alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell me what that does for you.
It makes me not think, makes me not feel. Kind of just buries it.
Yeah.
I still have to deal with it when I stop, you know. So that's the part that sucks. Is no matter how many drugs you do or how many drinks you have, when it's over, it's still there. The pain is still there, you know. But yeah, my son Jacob, I can't wait to meet him. He's a well-rounded, very intelligent young man.
Yeah.
And like I said, his parents never kept from him that he was adopted,
Gotcha.
because they wanted their relationship with him to be built on honesty rather than distrust, like what my sister did to my daughter. Like, had my sister told my daughter from the beginning, like, hey, you're adopted, or hey, I adopted you because your mom was a piece of shit, or whatever she wanted to tell her, it would have been better than saying, I'm your mom and this is your dad and that's it. Because now my daughter doesn't trust her.
Right. So
And she's
right.
she just ran away from home like a week ago,
Yeah.
and I guess she hasn't been back yet. So.
Wow. And
So yeah, I'm kind of worried about her, but I know she's probably somewhere close to home. You know what I mean? You don't ever go far from home when you're that young. You know, I mean, I guess some kids do, because I met plenty of kids on the rail that were, 15, 18 years old that had been riding for the last 5 years. You know,
wow.
I met one kid who started riding when he was 8. Hopped on his first freight train when he was 8. He wanted to get away. I said, well, what do you mean when you're 8? Like, when you're 8, you can't even like cognitively think, for yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he said, oh no, I'd pretty much been on my own since I was 6. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? And I was
You'd
like,
already
damn.
been surviving.
He said, I just hated the city I was living in, so I just figured that was the easiest way out, was to get on the train and let it take me wherever it took me. He said, so far it's taken me everywhere.
So how long? You and your husband have been in Seattle for how long?
For 4 years.
And you guys have been unhoused for 4 years?
Oh, I've been unhoused for 30 years. I haven't had
30
yeah,
years.
even in Sacramento I was homeless.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was homeless. I drove to Reno and broke the law and got caught in 2003, and in 2005 I went to prison for that crime. They gave me a sentence structure of 2 to 15 years for damn near taking a man's life. I didn't. The co-defendant that was with me did, and I still have nightmares about that. The blood. There was a lot of blood in that situation. There was a lot of. It was super traumatic. I have PTSD from that. I have super bad PTSD from that. Loud noises set me off. I do have a dog. That's my service dog. She's great. She's super comforting. She knows when I'm feeling it. Both of them do. But my big dog, she's my most comfort. She'll come and lay on my chest, and my mom, calm down. Your heart's beating really fast. So she's a good dog. Her name's Dirty. She's Daddy's dirty dog. She's Daddy's dirty bitch. So. But we got her in Klamath Falls, Oregon, while we were traveling. It's one of the places we hitchhiked to. But we walked, we hitchhiked, we traveled, rode freight train. We did however we could get there. We got there. But we left Denver, Colorado on an open coal bucket. That was when I had my old dog, my 16-year-old dog. And she's on the top of the coal bucket, and we're going through this little town, and I kind of peek up, and there's like cars along the side of the road driving, and you can see people looking at the dog like, how the fuck did that dog get up there? Like, what you can't call that into the train people, like, hey, you got a dog in your coal bucket? But we got off it. We rode it for 36 hours. We got off in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is a little tiny Spitfire town, and it was really cool. Like, Southern hospitality is a very real thing. Like, people think that it's fake. It's a very real thing.
Southern charm, Southern hospitality, absolutely.
Especially when you get off of a train after 36 hours in a coal bucket and you look black but you're white, and people that like, where did you guys come from? And they just handed us money left and like we were just sitting out in front of Walmart and like we made like $380 in the first fucking 45 minutes we were there. Like, so I mean, we traveled on faith. We traveled on, on the universe. We never begged for money, but we were given a lot of it. We never begged for food, but we were given a lot of it. We had one guy. We were in Butte, Montana, and this guy just rolls up one day and he's like, "Hey, you guys need anything?" And my husband was like, "Yeah, I need a new pair of boots." And the guy was like, "I got boots at my house. Get in the car." We ended up staying with him for 3 weeks and then he cut his fingers off. His name was Charlie Hand. He was bragging about how everybody in his family, in the Hand family, was missing fingers off from one hand to the other. And he said, "I still have all 10 of mine." And then on St. Patrick's Day, he got really drunk and he tripped over the butcher block in his kitchen and smashed into the stove. My husband and I wake up. There's blood everywhere. There's glass everywhere. We're like, "What the fuck?" And then my husband's like, "You followed the blood trail." "You follow the blood trail. I'm gonna start wiping down fingerprints." So okay, cool. So I followed the blood trail all the way to the hospital, which was just like the 2 blocks from his house. And I found him there that he just got out of surgery. They kind of cut off 2 of his fingers.
And then it just kept going on.
Yeah,
with Charlie
yeah,
Hand.
yeah. I was like, so I can't say that anymore, Charlie.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, we met some really cool people. We've done some really cool things.
Yeah.
I mean, most of it walking. We walked 65 miles south out of Fargo, North Dakota. We were headed towards South Dakota, but we didn't make it there. We made it to Wahpeton, which is 17 miles from the border, and that's where we stayed for a year. But yeah, and then so we decided we were just going to stay a year everywhere we went. We were just going to stay a year, and then we got here. And
sometimes it's longer than a year.
Yeah, it's longer than a year.
So you said your daughter's over there?
Yeah, it's here.
Is she housed her own house?
No, she lives in a shelter right now.
Gotcha.
She came out here homeless. She was pregnant in Missouri, and Missouri doesn't have any resources for people. And they make you wait till you're 7 months pregnant before they even give you medical care out there. And so I was like, you need to come out here. Come out here where there's so much more for you here. Like I can get you into a place. You know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't get you. Being pregnant, she would have been in a tiny home already. But when Sierra and them got swept from over by Office Max on the 2nd of February, they got my daughter and they were like, "Well, we're gonna put you in the shelter. You'll be there till Monday, and we'll get you a tiny home." She was like, "Okay, cool." That was February 2nd. So she's been stuck in the shelter all this time, and they just keep kind of putting her off and setting her on the back burner. And it's like, look, you guys are going to stop that because you're going to piss me off. You know what I mean? Like, and that's my daughter. That's my firstborn. She just turned 30 yesterday or Saturday. Yeah, yesterday, and or no, day before yesterday. And so Sierra had a little party for her. We had dinner and cupcakes, and I smashed the whole cupcake in her face. And I'm still getting cupcake out of my hair. She's still getting cupcake out of her nose. But yeah, it was great.
Regina, what would you want the people of Seattle to know?
That we're people too. We all have issues. Just because you live inside doesn't mean that you don't have problems. We all have problems, but we're all people too. Everybody out here, this is my community. You all have your community. We have our community. Stop and chat. You know what I mean? I mean, if there's something you want to know about somebody, stop and ask them. Don't just make up your own story in your head because it's going to be wrong. Most of us have kids. We all love our children. Some of us can't see our kids. Some of us see our kids and it hurts, But just because we're out here doesn't mean we're not people,
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it. Are you open to a hug?
Sure.
I appreciate it. No, it's hard stuff.
It is.
That's hard stuff. Fuck. I appreciate your time and
Hell yeah.
it's painful stuff.
It is. It's painful, man. It sucks, but it's life, Lots of people go through it. Even people inside,
Yeah.
I mean, even people inside. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and then anybody who thinks that they're not one paycheck away from losing everything, you need to really reevaluate your life.